Welcome to episode 119 of FBI Retired Case File Review with Jerry Williams. I'm a retired agent writing crime fiction inspired by true crime FBI cases. Today we are back for part 2 with Ed Mireles. Ed Mireles served in the FBI for 25 years. During his career, he worked as a street agent, supervisor, and manager in a wide range of investigative and administrative areas, as well as an undercover agent in hundreds of high-level, high-risk narcotics and criminal and national security investigations. In this episode, he reviews the April 11th, 1986 fatal FBI Miami shootout, where, during the pursuit of two extremely dangerous criminals, two special agents, Ben Grogan and Jerry Dove, were killed, and others, including Ed Mireles, were wounded. Although severely injured, Ed Mireles fired his shotgun one-handed to prevent the subjects from escaping, then charged the subjects, fatally wounding both. His heroic actions prevented further injury to his fellow agents and innocent citizens. He has received numerous awards and commendations honoring him for his heroism and bravery that day. He is the author of FBI Miami Firefight, 5 Minutes That Changed the Bureau, his story of survival and the fight to save the lives of his brother agents on that fateful day. The true crime book is available exclusively on his website, edmireles.com. I am thrilled to present this second part of this episode to you. I know I left you with a cliffhanger last week. I dedicate this episode to Ben Grogan and Jerry Dove for their bravery and dedication to duty on April 11th, 1986. But before we get to the interview, I'd like to invite you to join my reader team, where once a month I send out a digest of the previous month's podcast episodes, and I also keep you up to date on the FBI and books, TV, and movies. In the June issue, I write about the new FBI TV series by Dick Wolf, the creator of Law and Order, and I mentioned that I'm considering producing a new podcast in the fall, where I bring together a panel of retired agents to review the new FBI show. What do you think about that? To join my reader team, all you need to do is go to my website, jerrywilliams.com, and sign up when you see the pop-up. When you sign up, you'll get a copy of the FBI Reading Resource. The FBI Reading Resource is a list of books about the FBI, crime fiction, true crime, and memoir, written by some of the agents who've appeared on this podcast. Of course, Ed Mireles' book is there, as well as my books. Thank you. Here's the show.
The morning of April 11th, to me, was a typical April morning in Miami. It was gorgeous. Beautiful skies, cool breeze off the ocean, and, I was on my way to work, doing what I consider to be the greatest job in the world, So to me, it was just a regular day, we had a surveillance going on that morning, but, just a regular day, otherwise. So get to the office and, the whole squad's there. Everybody's running around, looking for gear, looking for ammunition and different stuff, body armor, raid jackets. I mean, we had all our equipment, the regular equipment that we were issued at the time. So I went in and grabbed my shotgun, opened it up, inspected it, make sure it was functional, and the ammunition was there. So then I'm looking around, and I everybody was teamed up by that time, and John Hanlon and I were the only ones that hadn't been teamed up. So we hooked up, and he said he would drive. I said, sure. I mean, I don't mind being chauffeured around, so, we quick jumped in his car, we had all our gear, and we make our way down to South Miami. Now, the reason everybody was hectic was because, like any other rush hour in a big city, there's a lot of traffic. And we had to drive from the Miami office, which was at 38th Street and Biscayne Boulevard, all the way to 148th Street and South Dixie Highway, which, as the crow flies, is about 30 miles, but as the car drives, it's probably more like 40, 45 miles, with traffic and bends in the road and so on and so forth. So, we wanted to make sure we made the meeting on time, so that's what the urgency was, So we get down there, about 8:30, 8:45, and most of the guys were there by that time, So once everybody was there, Gordon thanked everybody for showing up on such short notice, and then he turned over the briefing to Ben Grogan. And Ben Grogan was teamed up with Jerry Dove at that time. They were both SWAT guys, and I think Ben had taken Jerry under his wing as a mentor, to get him up to C1 standards. All of us had a mentor of some kind, somewhere, on the squad, So Ben starts giving us a briefing about, the Steak and Ale, the Winn-Dixie, the armored truck robberies at 136th Street and South Dixie Highway. And he gave out the description of the stolen Monte Carlo, how it had been used in the last robbery without even changing the tag, and the white pickup truck. And we got some residual information about missing persons, about 2 missing older people, and their cars had been stolen, so, and not recovered, so we had, 2 other potential getaway cars, but we weren't 100% sure, but they threw the information out there just in case, those cars and or license plates showed up. So, everybody, was studious, making notes, and some of us got copies of the police composites, about how the white robbers looked, and I was pretty confident. It's like 14 agents. We had all the firepower that we were legally allowed to carry by the bureau. At the time, the go-to sidearm was a revolver. And the go-to long weapon was a shotgun, So I had a shotgun, I had a revolver. Additionally, we had 5 SWAT agents on the squad, and I felt very comfortable with that. One SWAT agent, Bobby Ross, had an M16 fully auto rifle. Terry Nelson, another SWAT agent, had an MP5 machine gun. That's, God, I forget what MP5. It's some German make.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So some German make machine gun, with 30 round magazines. It's a 9mm caliber. And then all 5 SWAT agents were armed with high capacity pistols as opposed to revolvers. Since I was not a SWAT agent, I was only authorized to carry the revolver. So in that regard, it's like, hey, I carried everything I was legally allowed to carry. So some people say, well, you were outgunned. I said, well, outgunned is possible, but again, legally, I was only allowed to carry a revolver. So you can try to split hairs, but it is what it is. So, but anyway, so we split the team up. We had 4 locations where we were going to set up and be in a position to respond to potential robberies at other locations. I was set up at I was told to go to the Professional Savings Bank located at 130th Street and South Dixie Highway. There were 3 agents there, myself, John Hanlon, and Steve Warner. The second location was the Barnett Bank and Continental Bank location at 136th Street in South Dixie. There were 5 agents there. The supervisor, Gordon McNeil, Terry Nelson, Ben Grogan, Jerry Dove, and Richard Manauzi. Okay, they were at that location because that had been robbed twice. 2 armored trucks had been robbed at that location, and it was a big parking lot, like a shopping center parking lot. So it wasn't just a smaller area, that's why we needed 5 agents there, because it was a huge shopping center, So the third location was the Florida Bank located at 148th Street and South Dixie, which is around the area where we had our meeting. There were three agents assigned to that location, Gilbert Orantia, Ron Reisner, and Bobby Ross. The fourth location was at 184th Street and South Dixie Highway. And the three Homestead agents, the resident agents from Homestead, had volunteered to help us, and they were assigned to that location, 84th Street and in South Dixie, because, as it turns out, that was in their territory. That was part of the Homestead RA. So, everybody got their assignments. Everybody, starts breaking up in the meeting. We had everything, all the information we that was available. The equipment and gear that we were authorized to carry, everybody had it. So at that point, everybody starts breaking up. We start teasing each other. How guys are. They start, saying, hey, don't shoot yourself accidentally, or, hey, are you wearing your wife's sweater or what? So typical, alpha male razzing, that goes on, So it was a pretty, routine day, So we broke up, and John Hanlon and I started driving up to our location, at 130th Street. Steve Warner called out on the radio to us and said, hey, I need to get some gas. I need to gas up my car. So he said, I'll be out of service for a few minutes. So we said, okay. So we went to 130th Street and scoped out the bank and the parking lot, how many entrances to the bank, how many entrances to the parking lot, where's a good area to sit and surveil the bank without being noticed, that type of stuff. So then Steve Warner comes back on the air and said, hey, where are you guys? We told him we're at the bank, so we start kicking ideas around, and then somebody on the general channel said, hey, has anybody checked on the delivery schedules for armored trucks? And somebody said, no, it's kind of we didn't know what banks we were going to be surveilling, so that kind of, it was held on the back burner, so it was suggested that individual agents at the different locations contact the bank managers in their area to find out if they knew what the armored truck delivery schedule was going to be for their specific bank, So as it turns out, Steve Warner said, "Hey, I'll check our bank, the bank that we were set up on." And we said, "Sure, what the heck, I mean, he has a pretty good rapport, with all the different bank managers in the county." So he's the one that went to the Professional Savings Bank to inquire. As it turns out, that bank didn't open till 9:30. So when he went in to ask, the bank was still closed. And he knocked on the door. He got the attention of some tellers, and the teller called the manager. And as luck would have it, you get some strange guy knocking on your bank door, hey, how are you?
Yeah, I know you're not open, but can I come in? I know you're not
open. Yeah, can you open the door for me? Can you open the door for me? But, he showed him his identification, his FBI credentials and his badge, and of course, he's not wearing a suit and tie, because we're all on surveillance, we were all we call it dressed down, we dressed down. So he was wearing a polo shirt and some jeans or something like that, so. And he said, "Hey, I'm Steve Warner. I'm with the FBI. We're doing a surveillance in the area, blah, blah, blah. Can you tell me when your armored truck deliveries are going to be scheduled?" And the bank manager proceeded to tell him to pound sand. She didn't know why he was there and what he wanted, and this and that, So he said, "Hey, well, call my office. They'll verify who I am, So she said, "Fine, go away." So he went back in the car, jumped in, and that was that, So about 10 minutes later, the office calls down and says, "Hey, I forget what his unit number was, Steve, the bank teller, the bank manager from the bank called to verify your employment. We told him that you are, in fact, employed as an FBI agent, so the radio operator told Steve, said, hey, the bank manager will talk to you now. She'll tell you what you need to know. So Steve said, okay, I'll be there in a few minutes, So, that is what I call one of the dominoes, in fate, the cosmic domino falling. Steve Warner had gone to the bank and tried to get information. He was rejected, and then he was told to come back to the bank. Okay, that would have a severe impact on the shootout. In two other locations, at 136th Street, Terry Nelson, the agent with the submachine gun, tells Gordon McNeil, he said, Gordon, I need to run to the bathroom. He didn't say it like that. He said, Gordon, I need to make a library stop. So Gordon said, okay, fine, go, So he goes to the bathroom. And then at 148th Street, okay, Bob Ross tells his team, hey, guys, I need to make a pit stop here at this gas station. And again, everybody knew it's like, hey, he had to go to the bathroom, So Bob Ross was armed with the M16, the full auto M16, So I call that three cosmic dominoes falling and tipping each other over. Okay, Steve Warner is told to go back to the bank. Bobby Ross goes to the bathroom, and Terry Nelson goes to the bathroom. Again, three separate locations on the surveillance lineup, and every one of these guys did the team work scenario. He told everybody where he was going, and that he would be back in a couple of minutes. So in that regard, it's just normal. People have to go to the bathroom, So so they went to the bathroom. As soon as Steve Warner calls out on the radio, he said, hey, Jake, Ed, I'm going to be 10-7, which means I'm going to be off the air at the bank to talk to the bank manager. And we said, okay, no problems. He goes off the air, and within 10 seconds of him going off the air, we hear Ben Grogan on the radio call out saying, guys, he said, attention all units, we're behind a black Monte Carlo, Florida tag, NTJ891. And I almost dropped my teeth, okay?
Chills just went through my body.
No kidding. I get chills every time I hear that tag. It's like NTJ891, and the first thought I had was I can't believe these yo-yos didn't change the tag on the car, because in the previous 3 weeks the customs guy had seen the tag. We don't know whether, like I said, whether they were that brazen or that stupid. They weren't stupid men, but, you got to ask yourself, what the heck was their game, So, anyway, it was like electricity coming across the air. It was like, I don't believe this, okay? And I'm thinking, God, Steve just went in the bank, It's like, so when Ben calls out, somebody asks, what's your location? We were at 130th Street, the northernmost part of the surveillance. When they gave us their location, he said, we're at 124th Street. So they were already 4 or 5 blocks north of us. And I didn't understand, how they could be that far north of us without them notifying anybody, if you follow what I mean. They should have notified somebody that, hey, listen, we're moving, because they were at 136th Street, okay? And then all of a sudden, they're at 124th. Okay, that's a difference of 12 blocks, okay? And it wasn't until, I started asking and looking and listening to the radio recordings and stuff like that. What happened, and this is my speculation, they must have been on surveillance at 136th Street. Okay, and again, I told you that the two banks had been hit before. Armored trucks and/or bank robberies. We're looking for a black Monte Carlo, a black car. Okay, And my speculation is that they were on surveillance. They saw the black car pull into the parking lot of the banks or the shopping center. And rather than cause a big commotion by saying, hey, there's a black car here, there's a black car here, they probably observed the car in the parking lot, okay? And again, speculation on my part, the two banks that had been robbed in the previous month or two had hired an off-duty Metro police unit to sit in front of their banks as extra security. Okay, so there's a marked unit parked in front of the bank. Okay, so speculation on my part is that they must have, the two guys in the stolen Monte Carlo must have seen the marked unit and said, wow, this is no good. You know, we don't want to rob a bank with a cop car and a cop sitting in front of the bank. You know, that's just automatically going to cause problems, you know. So speculation is that they saw the marked unit, so they drove around the bank and then go left the parking lot, at which point Ben and Jerry had seen this. Okay, they based on the route of travel, the car must have exited the parking lot and started driving north on South Dixie Highway. Instead of causing a big commotion, you know, I speculate that that Ben and Jerry played catch up with the black car. Okay, they were trying to catch up, you know, to see if they could get a good look at the tag before they made any announcements. Okay. Because that's the only way I can imagine. Because there were two highly trained professionals, both SWAT guys. I mean, they're used to the team tactics and this and that, and everything. You know, and Ben was a 23-year veteran. You know, how could they go from 136th Street to 124th? Okay, and this explains it. Okay, they must have tried to play catch up with the black car. They couldn't verify what it was until they got up close. Until they caught up with it at 124th Street. Okay, at that point, when they verified that it was the black Monte Carlo and verified that it was a stolen tag, they called out on the radio and said, attention all units, we're behind the black Monte Carlo Florida tag NTJ 891. That's the only explanation that I can come up with for them, you know, being out of position by 12 blocks, you know. Which is perfect because, I mean, you know, at least we had them. You know, we had them in hand. So instantly, Jake Hanlon, whips the car, you know, into drive and whips up US 1, you know, the South Dixie Highway. It was about 9:25, somewhere in that time frame, and it was still kind of late rush hour. And we know we're weaving and bobbing through traffic, you know, because we don't know where they are, because the last location was 124th Street. We're weaving and bobbing, you know, and Ben Grogan and Jerry Dove are still calling out locations, cross streets, and so on and so forth. And Gordon tells the Homestead guys, he says, hey, make sure you call Metro and tell them what's going on. Okay, so again, that goes back to my pet peeve, you know, saying, hey, misinformation out there that we never notified Metro. That's the first thing he said. Make sure you call Metro. We want a marked unit with us when we do a car stop. I mean, all bases were covered there, you know. So he's the Homestead agents are you know, trying to get a location. They're calling in Metro and back and forth, and we're playing catch up. Ben is surveilling, trying not to be seen, you know, so this goes on for about 4 minutes, okay? We caught up with Ben Grogan at 117th Street. Okay, so they had gone from 124th to 117th, which is 7 blocks before we caught them.
Are the robbers driving at normal speed, or are they going fast?
Right. You know, it was all very normal, and you know, because the robbers didn't know that they were being surveilled at that point in time. They were driving with the flow of traffic. Okay, it just happened that traffic was kind of heavy, so we caught up with them at 117th. We were in a position to see Ben's car directly behind the robbers. and the robbers made a right turn onto 117th Street. Okay, at that point, everything's still great. So Ben makes the right turn. We make the right turn behind Ben. You know, things are going great. You know, I mean, everything's good. You know, all the units are responding northbound. You know, the Homestead RA guys are trying to vector in Metro. The wheels started to fall off when the bank robbery, the stolen car, and the two guys in it, the robbers, when we got to 117th Street and 81st Avenue. Okay, we came to a stop sign, and then they had a decision, left or right. Okay, so they went right. They went southbound. At that point, all our cover, the other cover vehicles, in other words, all the other traffic, disappeared. We went from a business thoroughfare to a residential street. Okay, so in other words, we went from 200 cars to 3 cars. You know, the bad guys, Ben and Jerry's car, and John Hanlon's and my car. So at that point in time, you know, they probably looked in the mirror and said, "What the heck are these 2 sedans behind us?" You know, real close. They went from normal traffic, normal speeds to slow. They went.
So you're sticking out like a sore thumb now.
Yeah, exactly. At that point, you know, there is no cover. You know, so they said, "Well, this is odd." So they slowed down from, you know, we were traveling at one time, you know, within the rush hour traffic, 35 miles an hour. On the residential street, we went down to like 15 miles an hour. I mean, there's no other traffic there. They didn't have to go 15 miles an hour. They could have gone 25, 30 miles an hour, but they slowed down to around 15. So, I mean, it's like, whoa, you know. So they proceed southbound to the next intersection, which is a T. They have, again, a decision to make. They go left or right at 120th Street. So they went right again. Okay, so they turned right on 120th Street. And you know, from your old days in surveillance, you know, training and stuff, how do you find out if somebody's following you? Make 3 left turns or 3 right turns. Okay, and if the person behind you stays behind you for 3 consecutive turns, you know you're being followed. You know, so they made 3 right turns, right on 117th, right on 81st, and then a right on 120th. So at that point, you know, by that time, Richard Manauzi had caught up to us, and he was behind us. Okay, so it was the bad guys and 3 sedans behind them. And they were going 15 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour, and the sedans weren't moving. You know, they were directly behind them. So at that point, you know...
And that was intentional, I take it, because some surveillance, you want to do a loose surveillance, but you're trying to arrest them, so that close surveillance is on purpose.
Oh, exactly. This is the first time we had actually gotten eyes on, okay? And again, Jerry, I can't tell you this with any certainty, but I can tell you with 100% certainty. There was like there was a mental electricity going on. Okay, we were maintaining radio discipline. The only people talking were Ben Grogan or Jerry Dove, the eyes. They had the eyes on the subject. Gordon McNeil, the supervisor, when he had to make a clarification or ask for information. And the Homestead guys looking for a vector for so he could relay it to the Metro PD. Okay, otherwise everybody was silent. Nobody was interrupting. Nobody was stepping on, you know, anybody's transmission. But there was an electrical communication. The communication was, these guys are not going to get away. I talked to everybody, and it was like telepathically communicated, or some electrical system, in the human system, that communicates, ESP thoughts or whatever. I knew that we were not going to let these guys get away that day. There was no way, okay? Because this is the first time we had eyes on these guys. We were not about to let them escape, okay? Not after they killed 3 or 4 people and shot up how many other people. And, you know, they were vicious, vicious guys. So my wheels start turning, and I'm thinking, you know, my biggest concern is if we're heading westbound now. If they had continued westbound, they would have completed a circle, a complete circle around a block. And I'm thinking, well, at that point, you know, they're going to be back out to South Dixie Highway with all that traffic. My concern was a high-speed chase in a, you know, a high congested area, you know. And I'm thinking these guys are so vicious that they would, you know, easily use the traffic, you know, play bumper cars with the traffic or shoot innocent civilians in their cars to cover their escape. I mean, I really had nightmare thoughts about that. I'm thinking, oh my God, you know. And then, miracle of miracles, instead of running straight out to South Dixie Highway, they made a left turn onto 82nd Avenue. And I'm thinking, you know, again, you know, these thoughts come to you, weird, you know, intrusive thoughts. Hallelujah. I'm thinking, you know, we're not going into the high traffic area. We're going into a second residential street. At that point, you know, I broke radio silence, you know, and I called out, you know, I said, Ben, we're right behind you, babe. If you want to do it, let's do it, you know, because I was, you know, getting a little bit concerned that, you know, these guys are going to start, you know, speeding away, you know. So what everybody was waiting for was for Metro to help us. Okay, marked units, you know, that's helpful in any car stop situation. You know, not that we couldn't do a car stop, but you know, it's like, hey, you know, you do a car stop in an unmarked car. People could say, well, I thought I was being carjacked, or you know, I thought they were robbers, or you know, any excuse, you know, by a criminal. You know, we're trying to block, you know, the excuse avenue. You know, so. But when he turned south on 82nd, at that point in time, Ben decided, hey, this is getting out of control. You know, we need to do it now. So he said, felony car stop, let's do it, over the radio. And I'm thinking, okay, we've got this, you know. And the last location that Ben called out to the Homestead agents was 120th Street and South Dixie Highway. Okay, not quite an accurate location. We were one block east, and then we're heading south on 82nd Avenue. So we ended up like 2 or 3 blocks south of the last location that the Homestead guys had. So they told Metro, we're at 120th Street and South Dixie Highway. Okay, that was the last broadcast location that Ben threw out. And I didn't know it. I mean, I was kind of busy, you know, trying to formulate a car stop, you know. When Ben said, felony car stop, let's do it, Jerry threw the little bubble light on the dash and plugged it in, and it started circulating, you know, started flashing blue. And Ben turned on the siren, you know, and as soon as he did that, you know, as soon as the siren hit, both passengers in the stolen Monte Carlo jumped, and they both turned to look back at at Ben's car. At that point, I think, you know, they suspected they were being surveilled, you know, but when Ben turned on the siren, it was verified. Okay, the cops are here. They didn't know whether it was Metro or Postal Service or what, you know, but they knew cops were there. So at that point, you know, Ben pulls out of line and tries to speed past them to block their forward motion. Okay, again, I spoke last week about there's 2 types of car stops, compliant and non-compliant. Okay, so Ben was trying to short circuit, you know, the potential for a non-compliant stop. Okay, so he actually pulled out and actually drove in front of the stolen Monte Carlo. At which point, the stolen Monte Carlo, I could hear the revolutions per minute, the RPMs of the motor. I mean, they just stepped on the gas, and I mean, everybody was stepping on the gas. Ben, stolen Monte Carlo, and Jake was stepping on the gas. You know, trying to he moved his car to the left, also trying to force them off to the right side of the road. Ben actually got ahead of them, trying to slow them down to keep them from going forward. And Richard Manauzi, who was the third vehicle in line, pulled up behind them. So we had them pinned on the front, the left side, and the rear. trying to force them off to the right. There was a cement wall, the rear part of a shopping center on the right-hand side of the road, so we said, hey, that's a perfect spot. The backdrop is a solid cement wall, in case, we have to fire, we'll be shooting, at a blank wall, So, the best laid plans, Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. Again, I told you, in a car stop, the bad guys get a vote, okay?
Right.
And their vote was, nope, you're not going to stop us, So they started ramming, the back of a Benz car. They started hard ramming my car. I was actually side by side with the driver. I was on the passenger side of our car, and the driver, who was later identified as Maddox, was, on the driving. Okay, and I could actually, we were so close. If our windows had been rolled down, I could have reached out and touched the driver. But as it turned out, all windows were rolled up, because it was humid, and we had the AC going.
And this is all taking place in a residential area.
Correct. And we're speeding down the road, my description, and my recollection, it seems like it was like a half an hour. But in reality, it probably took like 10 seconds. Okay. That's just what happens, when your fight or flight syndrome hits, you get time distortions and time slows down and tunnel vision and stuff like that, So we're trying to ram them to the right, okay, and Ben's trying to block them forward. And I've got the shotgun loaded between my legs, and I'm trying to bring the shotgun up to point it at the driver. But, since I'm next to the passenger door in the window, there's no way that I could bring the shotgun up, And if I had the presence of mind, I should have just, let go of the shotgun and pulled my revolver up and stuck it, and pointed it at the driver. The biggest question I have is I don't know what I would have done if I had pointed it at the driver, because they had not conducted or shown any deadly force intent on their part. So again, that goes back to the deadly force policy.
What about the fact that you had known that they had used deadly force prior to this?
Well, see, that's the problem, Jerry. I knew, and I was debating. It's kind of like Jeopardy. I'll take deadly force for 200, Alex. It's like, okay, deadly force. Okay, if these guys have killed 3 people in the past, they've shot, another 10. They've stolen cars, and right now they're ramming your car with their car. Do you have the right to shoot them?
Right, because what's the policy? You have the right to shoot if your life is in danger or if you believe other people's life is in danger, but it has to be immediate.
Correct, exactly. So I was torn. I was like, yes, no. Luckily for me, it was a jump ball, and I didn't have to make that decision. You know what happened?
What?
I had tunnel vision, and my vision had narrowed right down to the driver. I never saw the passenger, but based on Manauzi's testimony, the passenger, who was obviously on the other side of the driver, he was blocked, partly blocked from my vision.
Right.
And I had tunnel vision, so I never saw the passenger. He raised a long barrel weapon up and leaned forward so that he could aim in front of his partner. And what I never saw, and Richard Manauzi saw, because he was behind the stolen car, was
he's in the third car.
He's in the third car. The passenger, who was later identified as Platt, was aiming an assault rifle at my head. Okay, well, I'm, debating shoot, don't shoot, deadly force policy, and I'm still trying to bring the shotgun up. Okay, Manauzi did a superb job, okay, because I never saw, the rifle, never saw the shooter or the potential shooter. He sees it, and he speeds up his car, which is big. He had the biggest car out there. It was like a big Impala type car or something like that. I forget what it was. But he rammed the stolen car from behind. He just like speeds it up, puts the RPMs to the floor and just speeds it up and rams the stolen car from behind. And that jostled the passengers on the inside. He hit them so hard that it actually propelled the stolen car forward. And John and I were using our car to try to push them to the right. Okay, and of course they were fighting us back, pushing their car, the stolen car, to the left. So when Manauzi hits the stolen car from the back, it slingshotted them forward, and all resistance stopped on our car and on their car. So what ended up happening is we slingshotted, because Jake was pushing and turning the wheels to the right, trying to push the car off to the right, and they were pushing to the left, aiming their wheels to the left. So when all resistance stopped, we were propelled to the right, and they were propelled to the left. Okay, we ended up crashing into a tree and a cement wall, and they had more room. They ended up kind of like skidding off to the left, and they almost crashed into a couple of trees, but they managed to salvage it. So they're skidding, and then they come back and they make a total, complete U-turn. So now they're going back north on 82nd Avenue. Ben and Jerry are in front. They see what's going on. They make a U-turn and start coming back. John and I are shaken up when we crashed up against the wall. I know I was. Because we hit pretty hard. We were going about 35, 40 miles an hour when we hit the wall. And I wasn't wearing a seatbelt, because I thought it would restrict my movements, So I'm so very lucky I didn't hurt myself when I smashed up to the windshield. Another lucky save, So, but anyway,
absolutely, yeah.
But anyway, Manauzi's still back. Okay, he had pounded the car from the rear. Okay, and he kind of slows down and he's watching this thing unfold. John and I go to the right and the bad guys go to the left, So then he goes, oh my God, these guys are going to escape. Okay, so now they're coming towards Manauzi. And Ben Grogan and Jerry Dove were making a U-turn. They're going to try to play catch-up. So Manauzi said, hey, what the heck? We've been playing bumper cars, for the short part of the morning. And I've already rammed them hard one time. He said, what the heck? I'm going to ram them a second time. And you know what? That was a great call on his part. Because he said, hey, they're going to escape. Remember when I said, there was this unspoken electrical moment when it was communicated, these guys will not escape. And Manauzi took it on himself. He said, hey, they are not going to escape. So he takes his car, the only weapon he's got right at that point, and they're coming out of a U-turn, and he almost does a pit maneuver on them. He hits them at the front part of the fender, and it pushes them to the side farther to they're circling around to the right. He pushes them farther to the right, and then the car slips off of Manauzi's car. It still has forward momentum, so he ends up kind of like locking bumpers with them, the rear bumper, and he's continuing to push them sideways, and they end up pinned up against a tree and a civilian car that was parked in a driveway at 122nd and 82nd Avenue. Okay, and the car is completely pinned because Manauzi ended up parked almost like right next to the stolen car. The stolen car is up against a tree, and then the pinned up against a civilian car. So they're blocked on two sides by large cars, a tree in the front, and then Ben and Jerry come up behind, and they don't actually pin him in. Ben stopped at your regular car stop distance. He must have been, 10, 12 yards behind them, but they were blocked in. So that is how we stopped the car. Okay, again, it was an unspoken electrical moment, that said these guys are not going to escape today, and that is absolutely correct. Because I can't even fathom how Manouzi decided to just ram him. Okay, and he ended up doing the right thing, because they were pinned in place. There was no way that car was going to go anywhere. Then there was absolute quiet, absolute stillness.
Wow.
At that point, Gordon McNeil, who had been playing catch-up, pulled up and sees the car pinned in place, and he parks next to Manouzi. He didn't block his doors so that Manouzi would have an exit, but he parked with his car kind of to the rear of Manouzi's car. Like I said, everything was still, perfectly still. And John and I, Jake and I, are across the street. We're still shaking off the effects of the crash. Again, I can tell you absolutely that it was perfectly still because, I heard nothing. The car engine was kind of like ticking, from the heat. You know how when you turn a car up,
right.
Sometimes they click, click, tick, tick, tick,
right.
And I heard nothing, and then all of a sudden, Jake starts opening the door. I start opening my door. I look, I didn't even have to look, okay, because as I'm opening my door, I hear huge noises. Gordon McNeil had exited his car simultaneously. This was all happening simultaneously. Gordon had exited the car, drew his revolver, took a barricade position, a cover, behind the engine block of Manouzi's car, and he's yelling, "Police! FBI! Put your hands up." At the same time, Gordon and Jerry had parked behind the car. They jumped out of their car seats. Ben is behind the driver's side door, and Jerry is behind the passenger side door. And Ben is yelling, "Police! FBI! Don't move!" They're giving orders, okay? And Jerry had placed the bubblegum light, the little blue light, flashing light, had placed it on the dash. So the light is flashing, they're giving instructions, and the response was boom, boom, boom. That broke the silence, because, before I even exited my car, I heard the gunshots. I'm thinking, God, this is incredible. That's a huge noise. It was like, I knew gunshots. You remember gunshots from firearms training and stuff like that, but
what it's like when you forget to put your ears on it. Firearms,
exactly.
It's loud.
And you know what? But as loud as that was, it wasn't loud. It's kind of weird. Again, that's a survival trait, I guess, a fight or flight response. Because again, no earmuffs, but it was. I could hear it, but it wasn't painful. It wasn't so loud that I'm thinking, oh my God, I forgot to get my earmuffs, But, it was, again, the fight or flight response, it's called auditory exclusion. Your hearing kind of dims down a little bit, your some senses go up, some senses go down, but I didn't feel that again, I've been around gunshots without ear protection, and you practically jump out of your skin and you go, whoa, what the heck was that? This time, I knew what it was, and I wasn't jumping, and it didn't hurt, so. But as I start running across the street, John Hanlon is running across the street to reinforce Ben and Jerry. I'm running across the street to reinforce Ben and Jerry. But as I'm running across, I'm still scanning the area, and it's hard to see because of the trees. I'm in sunlight. I'm looking east. I'm looking into the sun, and I'm trying to see the activity underneath a couple of shade trees, and I can't see anything. All I see is kind of like a darkish shade area, and I saw Ben and Jerry standing up. But and then I looked at Gordon, who was partly in the sun, and I see Gordon to the left. I see Ben and Jerry to the right. I see John heading to reinforce Ben and Jerry. So I said, okay, if John and I go help Ben and Jerry, that means there'll be 4 agents on the right side, and I only see Gordon McNeil on the left. I said, so that'll make that area the weakest point in our line, okay, because we had a line going north and south, aiming at the bad guys, or where we thought the bad guys were. So I made a conscious decision halfway across the street to veer to the left to reinforce Gordon, okay, and I said, okay, it'll be Ben, Jerry, and John on the right side, and then it'll be Gordon, McNeil, and myself on the left. I said, that's a little bit more balance. So that's what made me veer off to the left to help reinforce Gordon's position, you know.
But there's no chance of crossfire.
Exactly. That's the word I'm looking for. You're so smart, you know. There's absolutely no chance of crossfire, right? Exactly. That was the whole purpose. You know, we want to make form a line, you know, where our bullets aren't going to, you know, hit some of the good guys, you know. So again, as I'm running across the street, everything seems to be in slow motion. Not quite slow motion, but not quite normal motion. Again, the popping sounds, I could tell you clearly that Gordon's weapon was making a certain type of sound. He was shooting a revolver. And then Ben and Jerry's weapons were making different sounds from the revolver. They were shooting 9mm pistols. Okay, I could distinguish between the shots, okay? And then I could hear this huge monster sound, kaboom, kaboom. It was coming from the jumble of cars in front of me, and they were covered by shade, and by this time, you know, there was gun smoke up in the air, you know, so it was kind of like, I mean, it wasn't like I was caught in a snowstorm, you know, where I couldn't see, but I didn't know where the bad guys were. And it's funny how the mind works. I did like a trigonometry assessment. I looked at the angle that Ben and Jerry were shooting at, and then I looked at the angle that Gordon McNeil was shooting at. Okay, and I said somewhere in the middle of that jumble of cars, where those two lines intersect, that's where the bad guys are. So I had a general idea where they were, but not a specific idea. So again, I run up to reinforce Gordon. Okay, and at that point in time, I mean, I wasn't. How can I put this? I wasn't scared. Okay, I was apprehensive. Okay. I mean, shots are being fired. I mean, you know, as I'm running, you know, I didn't know it at the time, but I ended up running into the direct line of fire that Platt was shooting at McNeil. Okay. And I kind of got that message, you know, when I heard these things flying by you know, these angry insects going out.
And you're like, oh, wait a minute.
From my Marine Corps days, I knew that was a projectile breaking the sound barrier, you know, when they go. So, but again, I wasn't apprehension and fear, scared, to me are two different things, you know. I was apprehensive, okay, but I wasn't scared. I was still functioning. I was still moving. I was still, you know, assessing, still trying to solve problems, you know. But then something funny happened on the way to the gunfight, you know. One minute I'm looking at Gordon, you know, because I'm keying off of Gordon's back, you know, where he's shooting, what direction he's shooting in. And I swear that, I mean, it was like a magic show. I'm looking at Gordon, and the next thing I know, I'm looking up at the blue sky. And I'm thinking, what the hell just happened? You know, and my mind is trying to wrap around this scenario, you know, and I'm thinking, what happened? And then I looked around, you know, to my right, and to get to Gordon McNeil's position, I had to go around the back of Gordon's car, which was sticking out at an angle. And I looked to the right, and I'm thinking, you idiot. I said, you should have given yourself more room to get around Gordon's car, you know, because I said, you cut it real close. You know, you cut it close to the rear fender. I said, and you ran into the fender of Gordon's car. That's why you ended up on your back. That was my mind.
That's what you thought.
That's what I thought, right? That my mind was trying to fill in a gap because, you know, I had no experience in this before. So my mind, you know, is trying to say, okay, you were running and now you're on your back. What happened? Okay, and I'm looking around and I immediately said to myself, I ran into the back of Gordon McNeil's car and knocked myself silly and I'm on my back. You know, and I'm thinking, you're stupid, you know, and I kept saying, you should have given yourself more room, you know, and I'm thinking, okay, you know, so I tried to push myself up because it's amazing. I'm still focused on Gordon's back. he's still shooting. Okay, but I see something odd is going on, because instead of everything being in normal motion, everything all of a sudden is like super slow. I mean, I could see Gordon firing. His hand would come up real slow and then come back down, and then, and my hearing was total toast. It was completely gone. I mean, I could just very vaguely, when I saw the gun smoke coming out of his gun, I guess my mind filled in a noise because I couldn't hear a thing, I couldn't hear anything at all. Okay, I had like a huge ringing in my ears, it's like, what the hell? And I'm thinking, I really must have knocked the piss out of myself when I ran into Gordon's car. I'm still working with the car scenario, And I'm thinking, I need to get up to help Gordon. And I'm using my left arm to try to push up because I've got the shotgun in my right hand. And I'm pushing and nothing's happening. And I'm thinking, what the heck? And then I see Gordon run out of ammunition. And he ducks down behind the engine block. And then he had been shot in the hand, and his hand, I didn't know how badly it was hit. But apparently it was pretty well mashed up, it was like ground beef almost, But he tried to reload behind Manauzi's car and he couldn't, so he retreated from Manauzi's car to the back of his car, okay, and crouches down behind that car, and I'm thinking, Jesus, I said, you gotta get up. I said, you've got the shotgun. If you can get that shotgun aimed and into the car, I could see the bad guy car. Okay, because I'm on my back and I'm looking up, I can't see the subjects in the car, but I can see the top of the car. And I'm thinking, if I can get this shotgun in there and pump 5 rounds of shotgun, firepower in there, it'll end this gunfight in a minute, So I'm trying to push up and nothing's happening, and I'm thinking, God dang it. So I said, what the F is wrong with my arm? I said, it's not functioning. And I had to force myself, Jerry. I'm looking up at the tops of the cars looking for threats. Okay, and I had to literally tear my eyes away from the point where I thought the danger was to look at my left arm, and I'm thinking, what the hell is wrong with my left? I'm pushing, trying to push myself up because honestly, I didn't feel normal. I felt a little odd. Like my ears were ringing, to no end, it's like, and it felt like I was like, not only were my ears ringing, it felt like my whole body was like, like someone had rung a bell, and my whole body was like a bell, and it was still vibrating from the ringing, like, and I'm thinking, okay, so I tore my eyes off the threat point, and I actually looked down to see why my arm isn't working, and I'm thinking, what the hell is this? I could not believe what I saw. It would look like roadkill, and I'm thinking, that can't be my arm. I said, there's no way.
Where were you shot in the arm?
I was shot in the middle of the forearm, directly between my wrist and my elbow. Okay, the round hit me on the medical side, medically speaking, on the ulnar bone side, and then it kept coming straight towards me, and it came out the radius bone side. But this is a miraculous shot because if my bones were thick enough to have actually slowed the bullet down. It didn't stop it, it didn't, it wasn't a bulletproof vest or anything, but it slowed the velocity down enough when it hit the first bone and then it hit the second bone. It slowed it down enough that instead of exploding straight into my chest, it exploded up, up into the air, like it almost did like a 90-degree turn in my arm. It came in flat, straight, and then when it hit the bones, it ricocheted up into the air, It blew my arm apart, but I didn't get any fragments or shrapnel hits to my face or chest, but needless to say, it would kind of ruin my health record, so, because I'm looking down at this thing and I'm thinking, that can't be my arm. There's no freaking way this is my arm. Because, half of it looked like it was gone, and then my hand was on the ground off at a weird angle. My fingers and hand were just puffed up with blood loss. I mean, it had bled into the tissue. My fingers looked like huge fat sausages, like those, big Italian sausages you buy in the store, except that they were red, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I did not believe that was my arm, to the point where I actually took the shotgun in my right hand. Again, I'm on my back, and I placed it across my chest. I took my good hand, my right hand, reached over, picked up my left arm, my left hand. Okay, I said, there's no way this is my arm. I said,
wow.
So I picked up my left hand and my right hand, and I picked up my arm, and I'm thinking, holy, it's attached. I could see it was attached by the interior of the forearm. There was still some strands of muscle and skin, that was attached to my upper arm. And I'm thinking, it's attached. It is my arm. And then I looked at my fingers, and I'm thinking, those sausage things are my fingers, because I chew my nails. I bite my nails, and I looked at my nails, and I'm thinking, that's the only way I recognize my arm, is I'm thinking, yep, those are my nails. I have this bad habit of chewing my nails, I said, that's my arm. I said, I've been shot, And then, what I did next was just kind of weird, I said, oh, okay, I threw my arm. I took the hand, and I threw my left hand on the ground. I just tossed it aside. It was I couldn't be bothered with it at that point in time, which in reality I couldn't,
Right. You had a lot more to worry about.
Bullets were still flying over my head, But you know what the bizarre part of this whole story is?
What's that?
I felt no pain. That's why I didn't know I had been injured. Okay, my brain was trying to bridge the gap. I'm thinking, how did I end up on the ground? I couldn't even think of it, conceptualize the idea of getting shot. I'm thinking I ran into the back of Gordon's car, but it wasn't until I visually examined my arm that I accepted the fact that I had been shot. So, but I felt no pain. I'm thinking, well, how can you tell you're injured if you feel no pain? Again, that's a fight or flight response. To getting injured, by a human. The human system, So anyway, I just ignored it, and shots are still being fired. I took up the shotgun, and I'm still looking for threats, and as I'm assessing, I see some movement off to the left, and I immediately, my eyes focused on it, and I'm thinking, what the hell was that? I said, it was gone. So then I'm scanning to the right, and then as I'm scanning to the right, I see movement off to the left again. And I quick turn, I'm thinking, what the hell? And then I'm looking to the left, and then I see something, and I'm thinking, what the hell was that flash? And I kind of screw my eyes up like this, looking at my forehead, and then I see something come out of my forehead. I'm thinking, oh my God, it's a liquid flying from my forehead, I said, and then I saw what it was. It was arterial bleeding, it was like, and I'm thinking, Jesus Christ.
So it's splurting. Blood is splurting from your forehead.
My forehead, yeah. And I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, I'm having a bad day here, man. The arm didn't bother me so much, even though it was a massive injury, But what scared me to death was this hit to my head, because I couldn't see it. So I put the shotgun back down across my chest, and I took my right hand, and I started exploring the left side of my forehead. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to feel a big hole up there. I'm a big broken part of my head or mush up there. And as I'm pressing my hand up there, I said, well, I don't feel any breaks. My skull is still intact, and like a big monkey, I'm inadvertently compressing the injury. When every time I press my hand up there, I look at my hand, it's full of blood, and then I press it again, and then I use my fingers, and what I was doing is I was compressing the injury, and I actually had moved a flap of skin on the wound, and it kind of covered it to a point where it stopped squirting, you know, it kept oozing blood, you know, and my face and my scalp and, you know, everywhere else, you know, on my head, but it stopped squirting, you know, and that kind of eased my concern, you know. I'm thinking, well, I don't have a big mushy spot on my head, so it can't be that bad, you know. So I grabbed the shotgun back up, you know, and I started scanning for threats, you know, and the thing went on so long, Jerry, that I'm thinking, you know what, and slowly but surely my hearing came back, and the shooting went, the gunshots went from directly in front of me, off to the right a little bit, and then off to the right a little bit more, and then off to the right a little bit more. So I'm thinking, you know, whatever's going on is off to the right. You know, I said, there's only one way I can get there, and I said I have to crawl past Gordon's car, okay, and get around the rear of his car and move to the right so that I can see what the hell's going on behind these cars. You know, because I didn't want to try to stand up. You know, I'm thinking, you know, standing up in the middle of this gunfight is probably not a good idea. You know? So
not a good idea.
I crawled to the, you know, around Gordon's car, and I looked over to the right. And at that point, this is the saddest part of the situation that it's in. You know, it's burned into my mind and heart. I came around to Gordon's car to a point where I could look past his tires, his rear tires, and I looked and I saw John Hanlon behind Ben's car. I saw Ben at the rear of his car on the left side, on the driver's side, and John was down behind the car, and I saw Jerry Dove by the driver's side door. Okay, and they were all still. They weren't moving. And I'm thinking, oh, my God. I said, they're all dead. I said, I can't freaking believe this, okay? And when I saw that, I was just appalled, and I was angry. I got more angry, if you can imagine that. And then it just so happened at that precise moment, there was a pair of legs, and I was looking underneath McNeil's car. I saw a pair of legs running from the rear of Ben's car to the front of his car. It wasn't running. It was more like a shuffle walk or you know. He wasn't walking, but he wasn't running. He was kind of like shuffling along, you know. And since I saw Ben, Jerry, and John down, and I knew Gordon was somewhere behind me, and I could see Gil Arantia and Ron Reisner across the street. They had arrived at some point in the shooting. I said, the only pair of legs that's still walking around this area has got to be bad guys. Even though I couldn't see I couldn't see above his knees, I said, it's got to be a bad guy. You know, so I took the shotgun in one hand, you know, and I aimed it, kind of like stuck it out there. And I'm pointing it in the general direction of this individual's legs, you know, from the knee down. And I'm thinking, okay, shoot. And then I looked beyond the target, and I saw Jerry Dove and Ben Grogan. I'm thinking, don't shoot. Okay, because if you miss, you're going to hit Ben and Jerry, you know. And I said, shoot, you know, this is the first time you've seen a target. Shoot, you've got the shotgun, you know. It was loaded with pellets, you know, and I'm thinking, don't shoot because you'll hit Ben and Jerry. So I went back and forth. For me, it seemed like a minute, you know, but, you know, in reality, it was probably just like 2 seconds, you know. A typical shoot, don't shoot scenario that you see in training, you know, somewhere. And I got what's called traumatic amnesia, okay, because I don't remember what I did. To this day, I still don't remember what I did. But the physical evidence indicates that I fired my shotgun at the perpetrator's feet, okay, and luckily none of the pellets hit Ben or Jerry, you know, because, I mean, I don't think I could live with myself knowing that I had shot them, and maybe my shot is what ended up, you know, killing them, you know. So, I mean, it was a hard choice, you know. But autopsy showed that, you know, shotgun pellets had hit Platt in both feet. Okay. It was like two hits into each foot, you know. Amazing, you know. So, but I don't remember making that shot. You know, again, I was told that the evidence and the wound at autopsy showed that he had been hit in the feet by shotgun pellets, you know. So again, Mentally, I did not shoot, but in reality, I did. Okay, so I kept scooting around to the right side of the Gordon's car, and by the time I got to a position where I could sit up and peek around the edge of the car, the edge of his car, I looked at Ben and Jerry's car, and I saw the two bank robbers in there, and I'm thinking, son of a gun,
They're in the Bureau car trying to flee in Ben and Jerry's car?
Yep, they were trying to escape in Ben and Jerry's car, and I'm thinking, son of a gun, these guys are ruthless. I mean, they won't stop. And I'm thinking, and then I assessed the situation. I'm thinking, oh my God! I said, if they back that car up, because I could see him. The driver who ended up being Platt. Platt was a passenger in the stolen Monte Carlo. He ends up the driver in Ben's car, and of course the reverse is true for Baddox. He ends up being the passenger in Ben's car. But I'm thinking, immediately I assessed the situation, and I said, oh my God, if they back that car up, they're going to drive over Ben, Jerry, and John. I said, there's no way that's going to happen. They're probably dead, but I can't be 100% sure that they're dead. But if this guy drives over them, they will be dead. I said, and they're not going to move that car. The only way they're moving that car is over my dead body. I thought to myself, there's no freaking way they're going to do it. So I had the shotgun still in my right hand, and then I'm trying to figure out how to shoot the shotgun with one hand, and then it just came to me because I'm at the right rear bumper of Gordon's car. And the bumper had a lip on it, and I'm thinking, okay, I'll use the lip on the bumper as my left hand, So I put the shotgun on the lip and aimed, at the driver, and I fired what I thought to be my first shot, and I missed. I hit the fender. I'm thinking, oh my God, I was so upset with myself. I was pissed. I'm thinking, you idiot, how can you miss with a shotgun? So I worked out a reloading mechanism.
How did you rack the shotgun with one hand?
And that was, it's just luck. It just came to me.
No, it's not luck. But go ahead.
When the shotgun fired, it pushed my right shoulder back. And I would, like I told you, I was kind of like in a semi-setting position at the rear of Gordon's car. And I said, you know what? I'll just let the momentum, push me back into a full sitting position with my back up against the bumper. And then I let the shotgun slide through my right hand until, the butt of the shotgun hit the ground. And then I pinched the shotgun between my legs, between my thighs, to steady it, and then I moved my hand up to the stock, the upper stock, and I racked the shotgun with my good hand, then moved my good hand down to the trigger guard, and then rolled over to the left side, put the shotgun on the bumper, found the sights, and then fired a second shot. And I did that 4 times. I just back and, fire, recoil back, let the shotgun slide between my legs, pinch it, rack it, come back up, 4 times. As it turns out, all 4 rounds, none of the pellets, according to the autopsy, none of the pellets that I fired into the passenger compartment of Ben's car hit any of the subjects. But it accomplished my mission. It prevented them from sitting up and trying to move the car, because they had to duck down with so many pellets coming into the compartment of the car, so they did not move the car, which gave more time, for me to get organized, and more time for more agents and officers to respond. At that point, I'm out of ammo, and I put the shotgun on the ground, and then I have my back up against the bumper of Gordon's car, and I look across the street, and there's Agents Orantia and Reisner, Gilbert Orantia around Reisner, and that's the first time I remember saying anything, during the whole incident. I said, "It's okay, come on over," telling them, "Hey, it's okay, it's safe," because they, when I spoke to them after the fact, they didn't know where the subjects were, because the subjects had been, running back and forth, behind, the cars, and, it was just hard to see. They were at a distance of about 40, 45 yards, again, looking from the sun into a shaded area, so They had no clue where the subjects were.
But when you were saying it's okay, come on over, did you think that you had shot them and that they were dead inside?
I thought that at that point in time, yes. I mean, there's no way they could have survived, with 4 shotgun rounds into the compartment of the car. No way, In response, they yelled at me saying, stay down, and I'm thinking, oh, crap. I said, they don't know the gunfight's over. I said, and I could feel myself getting weaker and weaker and weaker, I mean, as every second went by, I could feel myself bleeding away, and I'm thinking, oh my God, it got to a point where I went from, pretty much cognizant, aware, to a point where, when I was behind Gordon's car, I had to keep shaking my head to stay awake because I was passing out. I was like falling asleep, and I kept shaking my head, to clear the cobwebs, I remember I shook my head to a point where my brain hurt. I mean, I kept shaking my head violently, to stay awake, and I swear my brain was hurting from the violent shaking that I would give myself, to stay awake. And I said, oh my God. And I looked up and down. I looked north and south on 82nd Avenue, and I was amazed. The fire engines and ambulances and cop cars, they had set up a perimeter on the street, and I'm thinking, okay, nobody knows the gunfight's over. I said, I am going to die here. I said, I can't, the gunfight's over, and now I'm going to die because nobody knows it except me. So I'm thinking, I have to do something.
Nobody's coming to your rescue. They're just letting you bleed there.
Well, I mean, and I don't blame anybody. I mean, I don't blame Gil or Ron because nobody knows who these guys are, okay? And it's like me. I ran right into the teeth of Platt's assault rifle, okay? And he hit me twice. Okay, I'm so lucky to be alive, really. So, I mean, I can't blame anybody. I mean, you don't know where they are. Are you going to run straight into the teeth of an assault rifle? No. I mean, that's why they kept saying, stay down, because we don't know where these guys are, and I really couldn't. My communication skills were kind of, depleted by that time, because I was ranting and raving and shaking my head, trying to stay awake, I was talking to myself, but I figured, you know what? If I don't show these guys that it's safe to come in here, I said, we are going to bleed to death, because by the time nobody was going to run in there, to help me, because it's like, again, you might run into the teeth right into the barrel of an assault rifle, so I'm thinking, I have to do something to show these guys, that it's okay. So, I said, the only thing I know what to do or know how to do is to stand up. If I stand up and show them that it's okay to stand up, then they'll know that if I can stand up and I'm closer to the threat, then they can stand up and at least come to support me. I mean, these are all thoughts going, through my mind at about 1,000 miles a second, So the other part of me is like, hey, you know what? You're dying. I am going to die. Okay. And I went through this, the 5 stages of injury or death, I forget what they are now, disbelief, bargaining, anger, that type of stuff. And I went through those. I said, no, I don't want to die, and I said, I don't want to die, and bargaining, come on, God, Lord, just give me a little more time and I'll donate more at church, or I'll go to church every day, or, bargaining, and then anger, and screw you, God, I'll do this myself.
And that's all going to your mind in a rush.
It's like, there's 5 stages of death, they call it, but I went through all 5 stages, and like, again, my mind is going 1,000 miles a second, and I went through, and then I said, something happened. It was miraculous. I came to the conclusion, I accepted death. That's the last stage, acceptance. Okay. I said, you know what, you're going to die. Accept it. I mean, and I could tell internally, my physical, my cognizant ability, my awareness. It was like, oh, man, everything's fading out. I mean, I'm literally, everything's blacking out, and I'm weaker. And, I'm just like, I don't know which way is up, and that type of stuff, and it just came over me. Suddenly I said, you know what? I accept death, and an amazing transformation happened there, because after I accepted death, and I talked to Gordon McNeil and John Hanlon, who survived, they said the same thing. Once they accepted death, a transformation came out with them. They were no longer fearful. Okay, and that's what happened to me. I no longer became fearful, and that worked in my favor, because, instead of being, glad or thankful, about going into the darkness, I was no longer fearful. I became the most dangerous person on that scene. You couldn't take anything else from me. Okay, I have already accepted death. What else are you going to take from me? Okay, I was totally, fearless. I mean, I was like, I'm not afraid. So I forced myself up to my feet, and I said, I'll show everybody here that it's a safe area, but I really don't know if these guys are dead in the car yet. Because they should be dead, but I don't know. I turned around, and I started walking towards the car, and I would take 2 steps, set a position, and fire into the car. Take 2 more steps, set up a position, a shooting position, one-handed, and fire into the car. And I kept stepping, firing, until I got up close to the car, and I shot the driver. I had shot him in the head from my first shot from my revolver was to the head, and I thought it had hit him pretty good, And I ended up with my last round, and I aimed it at the driver, and I hit him in the upper chest. And as it turned out, that round, penetrated his chest, and it went up into his spinal cord, up in the neck area, and hit his spinal cord, and cracked the spinal cord and paralyzed him at that point in time. And he died a few seconds later. And that was pretty much the end of that shootout. I mean, but. Even though...
I'm sorry.
When I told you that I had accepted death and I stood up, I was still hopeful. I mean, I wasn't, damn the torpedoes, I wasn't, cursing God or anything. I mean, I was, but I wasn't, I think God has a sense of humor sometimes. It's like, okay, fine, I'll do it myself. I don't see God's hand coming down here, which is a lie. I saw God's hand everywhere.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's like, because honestly, Jerry, I should have been dead 8 times over. It's like if I was a cat, I burned up 8 lives. But even though I was cavalier, I'm thinking, I'm a dead man. I have nothing to lose. I was still hopeful. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, if I can get these guys to understand that it's safe and to come in here and help, I said, I know Ben and Jerry and John need help. I didn't know, honestly, whether they were alive or dead. I know they weren't moving at all, but I was still hopeful that they were alive, okay? And I was still alive, and I was still hopeful to remain that way, but, you never knew. So I moved in, I did what I did with my pistol, and that ended up ending the shooting, and at that point, Gilbert and Ron from across the street had started running in to reinforce me. I didn't even notice them until I was at the door of Ben's car, firing into the car. And Ron came to my right and Gilbert to my left, and they said that I was still clicking on empty cylinders, with my revolver. And they said, Ron said, and this is the next thing that I heard, that I remember hearing. Ron said, Ed, put your gun away. It's over, So I said, okay. And mentally I said, okay. So I put my revolver in my holster. And, out of all those thousands of hours of training, I snapped the strap on my holster. I snapped the gun in place. Okay, all that training, muscle memory.
Yeah.
And then after that, I took about 4 steps back away from the car, and I collapsed and fell on my back. So, and the next thing I know, it's pandemonium. Agents and officers and medical people, and at that point in time, the high was gone. I didn't have to worry about anything. And, I would say about maybe a minute after it was over, my body started working again, and the pain in my body was incredible. The agony that I felt from the gunshot wound to my left arm was agony. I mean, it was just like, oh my God. I said, where did this come from? Because I was riding, the adrenaline high. I'm thinking, hey, this is great, but when that adrenaline got used up, oh my Lord, I have never felt pain like that in my life, the medical people came in, they gave me 2 shots of morphine, and I was still in agony, and one of the medics was walking by, and I grabbed him by the ankles, because I'm on my back, I said, I need another shot, and the guy says, forget it. He said, I gave you enough to knock out an elephant. He said, you're not getting any more, and I'm
so your adrenaline, even though now you're feeling stuff, your adrenaline was to the point where even the morphine couldn't bring it down.
No, it couldn't. It couldn't, it's like, wow, but, eventually, things settled down, and they got, they got Gordon McNeil and John Hanlon and myself to the hospital. And I kind of sensed that Ben and Jerry were dead, but no one would verify it for me, because I kept asking. I said, hey, how's Ben and Jerry? How's Ben? How's Jerry? And they said, oh, no, the medics are taking care of it. It's like nobody would come right out and look me in the eye and tell me no, they're dead, It wasn't until I got to the hospital that Liz told me that, Ed didn't make it, and it was a sad moment, but, mixed in with the pain, everything is, pain has a way of masking feelings, I guess, or, camouflaging feelings, because, I hate to say it, but pain was my constant companion, for weeks, but that's the way things ended, I ended up in the hospital, Liz ended up there, and she was a tough trooper, man, she was, and she's, like I said, she's the one that finally looked me in the eye and she said, Ed, I'm sorry, Ben and Jerry didn't make it, and I said, like I said, I kind of sensed it, but nobody would verify it for me until Liz did, she kind of like teared up a little bit and looked away, so I said, okay, and after that, it just became a blur, it's like, doctors and, surgeries and stuff like that, so, but anyway.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Ben and Jerry. Both of them are now in the FBI's Hall of Honor, where FBI agents who are killed as a direct result of an adversarial action are memorialized, and that's down at Quantico, Virginia. Can you tell us a little bit about each of them?
Let's start with Ben. He was senior. Okay, we'll give seniority its due. Ben, like I mentioned before, was a gentleman and a gentleman. Okay, he always wore a white shirt and a tie and a jacket. We could be out in 120 degrees, in the Everglades, and he would be wearing a white shirt, a tie, and he might take his jacket off because it was a little warm. But the rest of us, we'd wear polo shirts or something, to dress down, if we were going to be out doing something, He had been educated in the seminary. He was from Georgia. His handle or his nickname on the squad was Doctor. Okay, and I could never figure out why they called him Doctor until later on, But Ben had been a squad supervisor, became a squad supervisor, stepped down to be a field agent, then became the SWAT team leader at some point in time for 5 years, and then stepped down, as SWAT team leader to give one of the younger guys a chance to be SWAT team leader, but he was still on the SWAT team. Ben was in better shape than I was. He was 53 at the time, and I was 33, and he was in better shape than I was because the man ran every day. At lunchtime, he would go to a park that was near the office. He would change in the office and then drive over to the park, and he'd run 2 or 3 miles a day. He would only do 2 types of exercises. I mean, he would stretch and do the whole thing, but he only did 2 exercises. He did pull-ups and push-ups. And he ran 2 or 3 or 4 miles a day. And that's all he did. You know, he didn't do weights, he didn't do, you know, yoga or anything else, you know, but he was in better, like I said, better shape than most young guys, you know. He was helpful, and he was mentoring Jerry, you know, because Jerry had just come on the squad like 3 or 4 months before, and he had transferred over from a drug squad. And he was very intelligent, learned, you know, he was worldly, you know, and his wife worked in the office. She was like one of the IAs, you know, that did the records checks for us and stuff like that. You know,
right, so, intelligence analyst.
Yeah, intelligence analyst for the office, you know. So he was a great guy, you know. Now Jerry, I had only met Jerry like 2, 3, or 4 months before. He was like I said, he mentioned before or last week. He was one of we had 4 younger agents on the squad, you know. Gilbert Arantia, Al Ortiz, Jerry Dub, and myself. We were the young bucks, you know. So in that regard, you know, we were always, you know, like doing young buck things, which usually translates into stupid things, you know. You know, so, but no, Jerry was a good guy, you know, and he had sinuses, and he would complain every time I lit a cigar. But then again, everybody, you know, would complain when I lit a cigar, you know. But I knew he was an attorney, you know, from West Virginia, you know, and I tell you what, though, I mean, I don't know many people from West Virginia. You know, West Virginia gets a lot of razz, you know, about, oh, you're from West Virginia, you know. So, but Jerry, man, again, he was smart, articulate, aggressive, assertive, you know, like I said, a young buck type, you know, and you know, he was a SWAT team member. He was fit as a fiddle. You had to be fit to be a SWAT team member, you know, obviously. Gosh, like I said, you know, the hardest part is that, you know, I only knew him for about 3 or 4 months. We traded cars now and then, you know. It's like, hey, can I use your car? You know, well, I'll trade cars with this car. I said, sure, you know. I mean, because he was doing surveillance, he was trying to mix up different types of vehicles in the neighborhood. So, you know, he would trade cars with different guys, you know, and stuff like that. So, again, he was one of those young bucks, you know, that's like aggressive. You know, he always, you know, I mean, of course, the senior ages were always razzing us. It's like, you young guys, you don't know crap, you know, blah, 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 you know. So we were always trying to show the old guys that we did know crap. You know, we were always looking to work, you know, volunteering to work and go do stuff that you know, as you get older, you know, you say, I can wait till tomorrow to do that. Jerry was a good guy, though. I mean, like I said, he was full of life, you know. I mean, he was single. I mean, it's like I told you, man, I said, if I thought my job was the greatest job in the world, imagine him, you know. Again, we're contemporaries. We're the same age, you know. I think I may have been like 2 or 3 years older than him, you know. But, I mean, he thought the same thing. Being an FBI agent was the greatest job in the world, you know. And people used to tease him, you know. It's like, dude, you're living the dream. You know, you're single, you're an FBI agent, and you live on Miami Beach. What more could you want? You know, plus you got the greatest job in the world, you know, so.
Tell me about the other guys that were injured that day.
Well, Gordon McNeil was the supervisor. He had risen up to be an ASAC in Houston, and then he got a sports injury. He was hit in the left eye by a softball game, and he lost his eye, so he couldn't see out of his left eye. You know, so Gordon has been called many things. Okay, a prince among men. That's one of the words, one of the descriptions that sticks in my mind, you know. And he was articulate, well-spoken, good-looking. He looked like back then in '86 there was a big Hulkamania. You know, if you remember the wrestler, the Hulk, the blonde wrestler, the big.
I'm not up to date on wrestlers.
I forget what. Anyway. Gordon, you know, guys used to say that he looked like the Hulk, the wrestler, you know, the Hulker. So they called him Hulkster. Okay. And he was fit. I mean, he and Gordon, I asked for a recommendation for a gym, and he told me that he belonged to a gym on Biscayne Boulevard, you know, which is a little bit north of the office. And I used to see him in there pushing some big weight, man. He would bench press 300 pounds, you know, easy. Okay, and he was built like a rock, you know. As a matter of fact, when he was shot, one of the rounds that hit him in the neck, as he was ducking, and the round went through his neck muscles, his trapezoids, or whatever the heck they call them, or I don't know. But the doctor said that the only reason that the round didn't sever his spinal cord, because it went down and it ricocheted off his spinal cord at about mid chest, and then bounced to the right and peppered his liver. The doctor said, hey, I have no doubt in my mind that your muscle mass, the muscles in your neck and your shoulders, were so thick and so, dense that they slowed that bullet down to a point where it did not sever your spinal cord. Instead, it just kind of bumped up against it and ricocheted it back, in the opposite direction, So the doctor always credited his workout ethic for that, and I have no doubt, So he was just a super guy. He had a beautiful wife and had two beautiful little girls at the time. Now, shoot, they're probably in their 40s by now, So very conscientious, would give you the shirt off his back, Like I said, he was worried about the case. That's why he told Ben, he said, hey, what do you think about running a surveillance tomorrow? I mean, it wasn't Ben's idea, it was his, It's like, hey, let's do it, John Hanlon, everybody called John Jake, or as better known as Jake the Snake, So John was an attorney. I think he graduated from Georgetown or American University, one of those D.C. locations, one of those D.C. schools. It wasn't Catholic, but everybody hated John. Do you know why they hated him?
No. Why?
Because he was so freaking smart, okay? He was maddeningly, I can't say the word, he was so smart he made you mad. He would go into an interview, and I would go into an interview, and I would take copious notes. And I'd end up with 3 pages of notes, whenever, if it was an in-depth interview, I'd have 3-5 pages, sometimes 10 pages of notes, that I would take. John Hanlon could go into that same interview, and I saw him do it, would go into that interview and ask questions and interact with the witness. And then we'd be there an hour or 45 minutes or an hour and a half. He would not take one stitch of a note. Not one. I mean, if there was an exotic spelling to something, or some exotic piece of information, he would note that down, yeah. But otherwise, he would not take a note, okay? And
how could he write his 302?
That's the thing. He was so smart, so brilliant, that he would go back to the office, he would sit down, and he would get his little dictaphone machine, and he would sit down, and because he sat behind me, so I had to listen to him dictate his reports every day. He would sit there, and he would dictate his report, his 302, off the top of his head, and he was that good. I mean, he would just, like, hey, no notes, no discovery, You
know what? That's what I was thinking in my mind. If he ever had to testify in court, then the defense attorney is going to question, where are your notes? Because we always had to bring out what we call a 1A envelope with our notes, and he doesn't have any.
Yeah, exactly. No, but he was that brilliant. I'm telling you, he would just come in and he would dictate, and he would remember the facts. He would remember the details. It's like, addresses and positions, and it's like, and people would just shake their heads and look at him and go, "What the hell?" He was so smart. He would get in trouble, because can you imagine trying to supervise or manage a person like that? He's smarter than you are. He knows he's smarter than you are. So,
yeah, that's the bad thing, yeah. So that's the worst of it.
I mean, supervising a guy. So that's why he was perfect for Gordon. Gordon was easygoing. It's like, hey, Jake, just do what you think is right, But if you run into a situation, just run it by me first, Don't sandbag me or blindside me. He said, if you do something, let me know. He said, otherwise, go put people in jail. Let me see, who else? Ron Reisner was a former Marine in Vietnam, like 2 or 3 tours in Vietnam. His nickname on the squad was Morose. Okay, he was very quiet. He was a no-nonsense guy. You know, by the book, you know, for the book, only the book. You know, so it's like former Marine captain. You know, so I mean, he's the type of guy that if you told him, said, Ron, we need you to surveil this apartment building because we know there's a killer here, and he will come out in the next week. You know, can you sit here for a week and watch? He would sit there for a week and watch. You know, typical, you know, hold until relieved. You know, he was that type of person, you know, and everybody kept saying
like a good soldier.
Exactly. Everybody in the squad kept saying, hey, you know what, you better hope, Ron, you never do anything wrong, that Ron, you know, is giving your case, you know, to find you and arrest you, because Ron will find you and arrest you. It doesn't matter how long it'll take. He is so dogged that he will find you, and he was, you know. But again, you know, former Marine, you know, he saw a lot of crap in Vietnam. You know, he didn't tolerate fools very, very well, you know. So his nickname was Morose. Oh, I forgot to tell you about Jerry Ben's nickname, Doctor. He got the nickname Doctor because they were at SWAT training, and one of the other SWAT members was doing some rappelling, and he burned his hands on the rope. He didn't set something right, you know. So even through the rubber gloves, you know, not rubber gloves, the leather gloves, he burned his hands, you know, going down the rope, you know, and he ripped the gloves off, and he goes, oh my God, my hands are hurting, my hands. And at the time, I guess Ben was the SWAT team leader, and he goes, let me see. So he's looking at him, and he goes, let me get the first aid kit, you know. He said, I'll put some of that first aid spray on because he burned the palms of his hands, you know. So he said, let me get the first aid spray, you know. So he runs over, grabs a can of spray from the first aid kit, you know, and he comes over and he sprays this agent's hands. And as he's spraying, you know, he's got his hands in front of him, you know, like together, and he's spraying his hands, you know, and then he goes, oh, Ben, it hurts. Oh, my God, it's on fire. What are you doing? He said, oh, my God. And then Ben looks at the first aid cream, and he looked at it. It's not first aid cream. It's off mosquito spray. Okay.
So the name Doctor was sarcastic.
Yeah, very sarcastic. So, you know, right, you know, so everybody called him Doctor, you know. Plus, you know, if you looked at him, he looked like an old Georgia country doctor. They knew that based on his experience, he couldn't read a can of spray that says off and then something that said first aid cream. And it was a big laugh on the squad, you know. So, but anyway, I digressed a little bit, you know. But anyway, and then there was Gil Arantia. Everybody called him the Kid because he was the youngest guy on the squad. He was from Arizona, a graduate of Arizona State, I think, you know, and his former life was a school teacher. He was a teacher in Arizona, Phoenix, and got hooked up with the Bureau. He was about 5 foot. He was built like Jerry, about 5'10", 5'11", slender. I mean, maybe 160 pounds, wet, you know, in his clothes, you know, and good guy, good agent, all enthusiastic. I mean, you know, again, we were the young bucks. You know, we had a lot of learning to do, and we were enthusiastic about learning, you know, and doing. So let me see, have I forgotten anybody? Manauzi, he was involved, you know, in the surveillance part of it, you know, and everybody called Manauzi the Count. They called him the Count because Manauzi dressed. I don't know how you can translate this, and I honestly don't know what it means, but people describe people as he dressed to the nines, you know. You know,
yeah, that means he looked pretty good.
Yeah, he did. You know, he always wore a minimum, you know, of a suit. Never, maybe every now and then a sports coat. I mean, because it is Miami. You know, I mean, sometimes you just wear a sports coat because, you know, you want to wear something dressy but not a full suit. And most of the time he wore three-piece suits. So he looked like the Don, Don Corleone or something like that, so people started calling him the Count because he was always, dapper looking, So he had been in the Bureau at the time, for quite a while. He was in Atlanta, Georgia. He'd been in Atlanta, Georgia for all his career. And then that, I don't know if you remember whether you were around back then, but the
10-169?
69, yeah.
Yeah.
He got caught up in that 10-169 thing, and he got transferred to Miami out of Atlanta.
Well, let me, just for our listeners, let me just really quick say that 10-169 was a decision that was made to transfer people, experienced agents who had been in a smaller office, to a larger office because they felt that the larger offices needed more senior, mature agents.
Yeah.
So people who were settled in the smaller, medium-sized office all of a sudden were pulled out and made to go to large offices. And most of the people, of course, they had families and children, were not happy about this decision.
Yeah, absolutely. He got caught in that 10-169 thing, but I didn't never consider Atlanta a small office. I mean, it's not, Atlanta was a big office, But anyway, somebody said, "Oh, you know what? Though we need to shake the tree," and he ends up in Miami. He could have ended up in someplace horrible. But let me think. I can't think of any. I think that covers everybody. Jerry. I mean, it's like I hope it was informative.
That doesn't cover everybody because it doesn't cover you. So let me take over here for a little bit and let everybody know that in October of 1986, the International Association of Police Chiefs awarded you its National Police Officer of the Year award for the year 1986. On December 4th, 1987, the U.S. Department of Justice recognized you as the Federal Law Enforcement Officer of the Year and awarded you the Attorney General's Award for Exceptional Heroism.
Mm-hmm.
And on April 10th, 1989, the FBI awarded you the FBI Medal of Valor, which I won't read all of it. I'll have it in this episode's show notes. But it says here, although severely injured, Mr. Mireles fired his shotgun one-handed to prevent the subjects from escaping, and then he charged the subject and fatally wounded both. His heroic actions prevented further injury to his fellow agents and innocent citizens. I mean, it's an honor to have had this time and for you to have spoken to us on these two episodes about this tragic event, but heroic actions that you took that day.
Well, Jerry, I really appreciate your comments, and in all fairness, I appreciate all the recognition and stuff like that. But I always say it was a team effort. A lot of us gave, everything we had, blood, sweat, and tears. But Ben and Jerry, they made the ultimate sacrifice. They gave a full measure. They gave their lives, and that is a sacrifice that a lot of people don't appreciate or sometimes don't even recognize or know about. If it wasn't for Ben and Jerry, okay, I can honestly say, because they did their part. Nobody backed down. Okay, they occupied the perpetrators long enough for me to regroup and formulate a plan to flank. In other words, to come around the side of these bank robbers. Okay, and they stayed in it to the end. But they are the real heroes in this situation. They, in my mind and in my heart, they're my heroes. To me, Ben and Grogan and Jerry Dove, they are the ultimate heroes. I could not have done it without them, and I could not have done it without the rest of the members of the C1 squad.
Well, we've talked now last week and this week for more than 3 hours, but I can only imagine what you haven't told us about, and all of that is in your book. This is a true crime chronicle of the FBI Miami firefight, 5 minutes that changed the Bureau. And in exchange for your transparency, your honesty, your bravery, and sharing this with us. I am going to make a plea for everybody listening to go out and buy your book. In the first episode, you were telling us when you first looked into writing a book that literary agents told you that nobody would care, that the information was dated. And so I want everyone listening to go out and buy your book so that we can show that those literary agents did not know what they were talking about. We do care.
Well, I really appreciate that, Jerry, but...
Well, you know what? That's the least that we owe you, for your service, for your bravery, for your injuries, which I'm sure still bother you to this day.
Yes.
And I really am. I'm selling your book. I really would hope that your story is one that people have had a chance to listen to a little bit in the last 2 episodes, but there's more to the story in your book, and they should listen to that part too.
Well, thank you so much, Jerry. I really appreciate it.
I like to give my guests the last word, so the floor is yours.
Well, again, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, and when it's all said and done, everybody stood their ground, nobody backed down. Everybody gave blood, sweat, and tears, but Ben and Jerry gave it all, gave 100%. I mean, as 100% as a human being can give, and they're my heroes. You like to think, that when faced with a scenario like that, you'll do the right thing. Ben and Jerry did not take one step back. They kept moving forward. They made the ultimate sacrifice.
Wow. And that's the end of part 2. At jerrywilliams.com, you'll find a photo of Ed Mireles. You'll find links to FBI website stories about the tragic and fatal FBI Miami shootout, one of the deadliest and most violent firefights in FBI history. You'll also find links to Hall of Honor memorials for Jerry Dove and Ben Grogan, and a list of the citations received by Ed Mireles for his heroism and bravery on April 11th, 1986. Most importantly, there is a link to his book, FBI Miami Firefight, 5 Minutes That Changed the Bureau. There is so much that we were unable to get to in these 2 episodes. There's an exciting twist that happened while he was in the hospital that you don't want to miss learning about. And of course, we didn't get to discuss the type of weapons that the FBI carries as a result of this firefight. And of course, misconceptions about whether or not the FBI that day was outgunned. So you want to get a copy of his book. I didn't get a chance to talk to Ed this week, but I hope he still has some copies left. He is selling it from his website, and there is a direct link to his website, edmireles.com, in this episode's show notes. Let's show him some love by picking up a copy of his book. It's a great read. Don't forget to subscribe to FBI Retired Case File Review on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast app. And don't forget to sign up to be a member of my reader team to keep up to date on the FBI in books, TV, and movies. This episode was sponsored by FBIRetired.com, the only online directory made available to the general public featuring retired FBI agents and analysts interested in showcasing their skills to secure business opportunities. I want to thank you for listening, and I hope you come back again for another episode of FBI Retired Case File Review with Jerry Williams. Thank you.